is it a struggle then? If he really knew it was a test, and we're going to get to this in a second.
But he does speak to Yitzchak. Yitzchak asks, where is the offering?
Right.
And he says, God will provide it, my son. You're the offering.
Well, that's one way of reading it. He's not reading it like that. He's reading it by saying, right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give the sacrifice, but I have to go through the motions in order to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I'm ready, even though, and this is what he says, he's of two minds, right? That he has this infinite movement of resignation, that he's really willing to sacrifice his son, on the one hand, but on the other hand, he knows that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to ask him to do it. And he's holding on. I wanted to put it on the computer so you can see it. I didn't print it out. You know, there's these pictures of the old woman and the young woman in the same face.
Yeah.
You know, there's pictures, there's optical illusion. So I was looking for, there's much crazier things also that I saw on the computer when I was looking for last night. But anyway, but this picture, right, it's very difficult to see both at once. Right? You can see one, usually I think most people see the young woman first. Right? And then you have to concentrate a little bit more because it's a little bit lower, and you usually don't concentrate on the bottom of the picture first. You look at the top. So the young woman is at the top, and the old woman is at the bottom. There's like a scarf, and then it becomes her mouth of the old woman. But it's very hard to hold both those images at once. And what his claim is that why this was a test that Avraham Avinu succeeded in is because he really believed both these things. He believed with all his heart that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to sacrifice his son, and he was willing with all his heart to go ahead and do it. And at the same moment, he believed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not ask him to do it. That he had, and this is what he says, that he has this infinite movement of resignation, but he has a movement of faith. Of faith that this HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him that Yitzchak is going to be his seed, and he's going to carry. But he's somehow able to hold both of these things at once and move forward. And I just want to finish this. However, a last word of Abraham has been preserved. And insofar as I can understand the paradox, I can also apprehend the total presence of Abraham in this word. Firstly, he does not say anything. And as in this form, he says what he has to say. His reply to Yitzchak is in the form of irony. But it always is irony when I say something and do not say anything. Yitzchak interrogates Abraham on the supposition that he knows. He's saying, you must know what's going on. So then if Abraham were to reply, I know nothing, he would have uttered an untruth. He didn't say, and this is what he's trying to sharpen this a little bit, is at least the textual analysis here. He doesn't say, I don't know. He says HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give the sacrifice. And by saying that, if he said, I don't know, it would be false. So he's saying, I know with all my heart that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us a sacrifice. I know it's not going to be you. And he knows with all his heart, he's doing this faithfully. He's moving, not just going through the motions, waiting, okay, I'm ready. You know, I'm ready. You can stop me any minute now. He's really willing to go through with it. And this is how he holds these two things in tension. I'm just going to skip to the end. Here, the double movement in Abraham's soul is evident, as it was described in the foregoing discussion. Okay? So, this has been called in existential philosophy kind of it's a way of explaining this teleological, suspension ethical. And here he says that we have a double mind. Okay? That you're of two minds, but and he says again, I didn't bring all of the discussion here in Kierkegaard, but he points out that this is something that people who aren't on the level of faith we can't understand. And remember that I don't know if people remember from the philosophy class once upon a time that the book was written in a pseudonym. Kierkegaard, for I don't know how long he kept it, that he wasn't the author, but it was written supposedly by Johannes Salenta, right? John the Silent. And the whole idea behind this is that this Johannes Salenta goes through the whole discussion. He says, I can't understand how he did it. I can't understand how he did it. I can't understand how he did it. And more or less, his conclusion is that it's a level of holding these two opposites at once that is above rationality. That unless you have a level of faith, the person without a level of faith can't understand what a person of faith is going through. And what
we call it a conundrum. You know, your brand new fancy car is sitting on a cliff with your mother-in-law.
No, that I say is the difference between that. Again, that's a tragic hero. Whatever you do, in that instance will be tragic. But here he's saying something strong. He's saying it's an abdication, because here resignation of the moral.
I'm kidding
that
about
you're leaving you're leaving the moral world completely behind to do something which on its face is completely immoral. And you're doing it because God told you.
Don't we see in the Middle Ages that many Jews, they shechted their own children?
No, not
Rather
many,
than
but
see them become
there were
Christian?
instances. There were instances.
And would it be the end of the world if the kid, to kill the kid?
Well, they say, there's a question. It's one of the question in the Rambam's understanding of Yareg V'al Yavor and the three mitzvot, and someone who doesn't, right? The Rambam concludes, I don't know if it's the very conclusion, but at the end, he reminds us, and remember, Yareg V'al Yavor, let's say you didn't do it. You're patur.
Right.
There's no avera. If you didn't do it, there's no avera, because anus, Rahman Tatrei, and there's no more anus than someone who's coming and saying, I'm going to kill you if you don't buy down to that, I'm going to kill you if you don't. So if you do it, you're anus, Rahman Tatrei. But it's a different discussion, and again, that might be, again, two competing values, rather than the way he's setting up, as one value and one non-value. So somebody who speaks in sort of the same way, that a lot of the discussion has to do with this kind of avera lishma. And the Ger Rebbe, the first Ger Rebbe in Sfat Emet, and I would rest assured that he never heard of Kierkegaard, he never knew of Kierkegaard. But
Vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa, I'm sure that's good. He comes up with something which is reminiscent of this way that Kierkegaard discusses it, but different. It's similar in the sense that this two-mindedness is at play. But Pasuk, so he starts with the end of the story. But Pasuk, Ata yedati ki yira Elokim ata. At the end, right, after the Malach stops Avraham Avinu from shechting Yitzchak, Malach comes and he says, Ata yedati ki yira Elokim ata. He says, now I know that you have a fear of God. Umakshi, and there's a kushya on this. Halo avodato shel Avraham haya bechinat ahavat Hashem, שהוא למעלה מעובד מיראה, ולמה יחס לו הכתוב יראה אלוקים? So it says, it's an interesting question, that why does this say that I know that you have fear of God now? Why doesn't it say I know that you love God now? That you, I see now there's this great love of God. No, it says, I see that you have a fear of God. And Avraham Avinu is represented, is a lot written about that. There's a Pasuk, Avraham Ahuvi, that God calls Avraham Avinu, he calls him my beloved. And the idea that this is like a lower level, is avodah me'ira, you're scared, right? Like it's a kid does what you say to him because you know he's going to get smacked if he doesn't do it. Or we drive the speed limit because we know we're going to get punished if we go too fast, right? And that's very different than doing something out of love. That when you're a kid, finally, once, in 35 years, does something and says, oh, you look tired, let me get you a glass of water. You almost have a heart attack. Because it's like, why? What am I doing? I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to tell you to get me the water or you're going to your room, right? So, aval, hatirutzu ki ze atzmo haya nisayon. So he says, this itself was the nisayon. And this is a fantastic kiddush. So no one else says this up here. There are very few, I don't know if there's any midrash that came up with this idea either. That the nisayon itself was this tension between ahava and yira, between love of God and fear of God. Right? Ki vadai Avraham Avinu alav shalom she'azav al tzor moladto v'shlich etzmo lekibshan ha'esh ba'avor haborei yitparach ma nisayon l'shchot et bano. So he says, look, the nisayon, you can't say, and he moves in a completely different direction. He says, you can't say that the nisayon for Avraham Avinu was to kill his, he would have done it. This is a little bit beyond the pale maybe, but he says he left his home, he threw himself in the furnace, according to the Midrash, all these different things he went ahead and did, and now you think he's going to have problems listening to a Kadosh Baruch Hu when he tells him to do something else? Nah, that wasn't the nisayon, that wasn't the struggle. Okay? Aval, haterutz hu ki bevadai ha'oved me'ahava kamo Avraham, that somebody who loved or served God out of love, Nimshach libo ume'av lasot rotzon kono, that he was pulled to do, his heart and his entire being was pulled to do the will of God. Ad shekol evarav nimshachim b'tiv'am lasot rotzon, his entire body is going after what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. V'kol ramach evarav shelo, all his organs, kol chayutam, right? Every part of him want to do God's will. HaMitzvot shel Hashem Yitbarach. Achen be'emet, but in reality, lo haya retzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'shchot et Yitzchak. But in reality, and this is a Midrashim that discuss this also, right? What does God say to him? Right? Yomer kafna et bincha et yerucha asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha le'eretz haMoriah v'alehu sham la'olam. It says bring him up. It doesn't say the shechtim. The first time that the word l'shchot comes up is when Abraham has the knife and the malach stops him. That's the first. Maybe it goes forward, meant something else to dedicate him, bring him up to the mountain, show him what the, who knows. Right? Abraham Avinu understood it this way. Right? אכן באמת לא היה רצונו של הקדוש ברוך הוא לשחוט את יצחק, וליבו של אברהם לא הגיש דבקות ואהבה בזו העבודה, על ידי שבאמת לא היה כן רצונו של השם יתברך, ולכן היה ניסיון, ולכן נאמר וירא את המקום מרחוק. Right? So what is he saying? He's saying Abraham Avinu is on this level that he knows in his heart the will of God, and he gets this commandment from God, which he knows it sounds something's wrong here, that he realizes somewhere deep in his being, deep in his heart, that it's not the will of God. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him to do something that he really doesn't want, that he knows Kadosh Baruch Hu really doesn't want him to do. And that's, right, he turns everything upside down 180 degrees around, that he said, because Abraham Avinu was so fine-tuned in with the will of Kadosh Baruch Hu, he knows deep down, wait a second, there's something the matter with this commandment. He knows this is God speaking. That's not the question. Like Buber, a different Midrashim with the Satan, that's not bothering him. What bothers him here, he says, I know there's something wrong with this commandment. This is a commandment which God expects me not to fulfill. And the struggle here is to do what God tells me to do, even though I know it's not God's will, because I feel it. I know what God's will. I'm very in tune with what God's will wants me to do. All right?
Then why didn't he bring a sheep with him?
What?
Why did he bring a sheep with him? With the understanding that he knows.
Because then, and going back to the because that would be not doing what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. His test here was to do according, let's say it this way, the letter of the law here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him something that he knows HaKadosh himself doesn't want. But he's going to go ahead and do it anyway. And that's the opposite, right? Instead of, right, the problem with all these, there's a long masorah of questioning Avera Lishma, right? Of saying something that's still a suspension on the other. There's a long masorah that raised the question, so how do we know when do we stop, right? There's an antinomian problem, right? That you stop obeying the law in one instance, so how could we not say, well, let's stop it altogether, or let's stop it in this instance, we'll stop it also there. Right? If it was okay for me to do it then, maybe I'll do it now. Right? And this turns everything around. He says, no. That the question here was to move not according to the will of God, but according to the word of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Alehu Sham La'olah, as he understood it, was the Shechta. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu never wanted him to sacrifice. But he has to go through the actions, and not just go through it, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's in his heart. Right? So he can't pretend, he can't bring a sheep and say, well, I know, between me and you.